Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arseholics podcast. You've got Raj here. I'm extremely excited today. Not just because Arsenal battered Spurs in the North London derby, but it's because the Messiah is back. The Messiah is back. Some of you may have realized because you're watching this and you're watching it later on YouTube, and some of you may not realize what I'm talking about yet because you're listening on audio. And the suspense is it's worth it, man. And I know it must be killing you guys, but what I mean to say by all this is Niro, the Messiah, is back. He is here. He is with us.
Thanks for having me back, guys. Thank you very much. Let everyone know I'm under strict instruction not to say I told you so about Pepe, but we won't go there today. So.
You're about 50 episodes too late, mate. Like, we moved on, you know. I know it's been about 10 years since your last pod.
I'm still holding on to it, though. Yeah.
It is good to see you, Niro. It's always good to see you, Mize. How's it going, Mize? You good?
I'm very good, mate. I'm super happy today, obviously.
Is it because of Niro or is it because of...
Oh, yeah, that as well. No, that's an extra bonus. But yeah, obviously, it was a good weekend, to say the least.
Yeah, and I mean, and Aaron is still, like, completely wasted, hungover from the game. So obviously that he sadly couldn't make it today. But look, really excited to get into the details. We've got lots to talk about, guys, haven't we? Before I get into it, everyone, whoever's watching live, whoever's watching it on recorded play, please like, subscribe, share. Really appreciate it. I always forget to say it, and in the hope that it gets us one more share and one more like and one more subscriber, I'm going to try and make sure I keep saying it. So please do that if you can, guys. It only takes a second. Now let's get on to the real stuff. So, oh man, like, you know, we have been in such a great mental space this season, haven't we? It feels like before the international break happened, you know, we said, if you asked any Arsenal fan out there, would you believe that we would be first in the table before the international break? You know, I think we unanimously said, you know, no one would have thought that, and we'd have taken it in a million years. And to then come back from that, you know, from that break, there's always that concern that is that a long period of form, and now is the bubble going to burst? You go into North London derby, and Niro, tell me, North London derby, it doesn't get much bigger than this. It was an early kickoff, a bit jittery. You know, we've always got these nerves. But what did Arsenal do for you on the day, mate?
Yeah, I think remember we spoke about it before. I think we spoke about it just at the pub before we went into the game about, you know, 12:30 kickoff, you know, what happened with Brentford with their fans. Yeah, so before sort of going into the game, we were a bit sort of nervous with the international break as well. But I think you said before, you know, as long as we carry on playing as we normally do, keeping the ball, and obviously Spurs haven't really been keeping possession much this season, that will get the fans on board straight away. And I think the fans were sort of fantastic throughout the game. And I think that energy was sort of passed on to the players. So literally, I think from the kickoff, we were all over them, I thought, comfortable in possession. You know, Martinelli had that chance right at the beginning. And for me personally, I think the game was probably won in midfield. I thought Xhaka, Partey was completely were all over sort of, you know, Bentancur and Højbjerg. And I think that's where we were completely comfortable. And I thought that's where the sort of class difference was personally. And I think that sort of energy and that, you know, they couldn't really press us at all. And I thought, yeah, throughout the whole game, we could sort of see that.
Completely agree with you, mate. Just touching on something that you said at the beginning, mate. So, you know, you mentioned, we talked before the game about Brentford and about the Brentford game, and about one of the things that we talked about was allegedly Arsenal got a bit lucky against Brentford, allegedly, because it was an early kickoff at a stadium where the atmosphere is generally quite good. And because it was an early kickoff, apparently the atmosphere wasn't as good, and that helped Arsenal. I mean, was it the fact that it was a North London derby, or is it just the fact that that is an absolute nonsense thing to say? And the fact is, you know, I did not feel that there was any issues with the atmosphere being an early kickoff. What did you think, Niro?
Yeah, completely agree. I think, again, because the players sort of passed on the energy to the fans straight away. Because I remember, was it a couple of years ago when it went to the, I think, Arsenal Man United match. I think it was the New Year's Day game. Yeah. And again, for the first sort of 5 minutes, it was obviously everyone's probably hungover from the night before, but the first 5 minutes was quite sort of, you know, quite airy, very sort of dead atmosphere. And then because Arsenal sort of came out straight away, the whole the whole stadium for the rest of the game, rest of the 85 minutes was absolutely electrifying. And I sort of felt that sort of straight away here as well, because we were on the front foot straight away. Any sort of, morning jitters we had, or, hangover from the international break, that was sort of put to rest straight away. And sort of the fans got behind the players sort of from the first minute, really.
Yeah, totally. Is that we pretty much every game that we reviewed this season, I think that we've talked about what a great start Arsenal have had in all those games. We go back to the Palace game and about starting at 100 miles an hour. I mean, what were your thoughts in how the game started? Was it exactly how you envisaged it and how Arsenal have been kind of this season?
Definitely how Arsenal have been this season. I did envisage a slightly kind of tighter start, just given the quality of who we were playing and the fact that it was a North London derby. And I think I think in the preview episode we did, I think Aaron and maybe a couple of other people pretty much said, look, we come out, we play our game, we take the game to Spurs, we go on the attack and we will score goals. I think Aaron said that pretty kind of definitively. And I think that was the case. I know we didn't get the goals in the first half, but we definitely came with the intention, or should I say, we started the game with the intention of trying to score goals and trying to win the game in the first half, essentially. And, that's fantastic to see, because like you say, Raj, that kind of common theme this season of us really taking it to teams is quite refreshing, because that hasn't been the case with Arsenal for a while. I would say it's been pretty inconsistent. So that was yeah. And like I say, I think given that it was Tottenham, given that it was North London derby, yeah, the energy's high, and that's what you want to see from the home team from us. But I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I was expecting a little bit more of a cagey start, and especially given that we knew that Tottenham were probably going to come and do exactly what they did. Right, they were happy to sit in. As Niro said, they've not really been a possession team this season so far. They're not, it's not Conte's style. And it felt like what we expected to happen happened, in terms of, they were happy to sit in and play on the counter, which is obviously what they did. And I thought because of that, because of the way that Spurs would come and set up and kind of sit in, it would be a bit more difficult. Maybe not so much a bit more difficult, but I felt like we might need to be pretty patient in terms of getting the chances. But yeah, I mean, and I think, the front, I know we're going to get into individual performances, but I just feel like this front three, they're so kind of effervescent. They're so exciting to watch. They're always kind of buzzing, movements, sort of top quality. And it just looks like Jesus has just added this, as we keep saying, right? He's added this additional dimension. And it feels like, even though maybe Xhaka and Martinelli, some people might argue their output so far this season in terms of goals and assists aren't kind of elite levels. However, when you watch them for the entire game, they just look non-stop dangerous. They look like they're always trying to make something happen. Like Martinelli, I just feel like they're both going to explode at some point this season, both Xhaka and Martinelli, and all of a sudden they're going to be, like I say, scoring a lot more goals. But overall, the way we started the game was really good to see. And generally happy. I think I commented, sorry, and I'm going on a bit here. I know I commented about kind of how Spurs came back into the game in the in the first half, especially after they got the penalty. And a common theme did seem to be because of the way they set up, they did seem to have that out ball quite a lot, which was a little bit of a worry, because I felt like there were, even the way they got the penalty, that was a bit kind of defensively from us. I felt like we could have maybe done a bit better just to be a bit tighter. But again, given the quality of the opposition, you kind of got to expect that they're going to have, at some point in the game or some period in the game, their plan is going to pay off. But maybe we're a little bit lucky. There was the chance they had right at the start where Ramsdale makes an excellent save. And I think that save hasn't really been talked about that much, but it's actually a quality save at a position when you're 0-0. It could have been a different game. So yeah, overall, definitely very, very happy with how we started the game.
I did think about that watching the highlights yesterday and watching that chance where they really should be scoring. It's a really good chance that they have. It's Richarlison, isn't it, who gets the final touch? And you think about that in terms of football is all about margins, isn't it? That goes in. It's a completely different game. It has to be managed completely differently. But I think that overall, kind of, when you were talking about the first half, it was exactly the score was not what I thought it was going to be. I went for a draw, but as I said before, like in the preview, I really figured it was going to be plan A versus plan A. And that was completely what the first half was. It was Arsenal setting up exactly how they knew to do best this season, with Zinchenko starting, which I thought was interesting. So Niro, I'll just come to you in a second to get your thoughts on that. But, you know, starting with Zinchenko as opposed to Tierney, trying to basically go for it and say, this is what we do well. We're at home. Let's go for it. And Tottenham basically not moving to a 3 in midfield. You know, we had Jason, the Spurs fan, in the preview, almost praying that Tottenham set up with 3 in midfield because he felt that, you know, they were too defensive. And I think we predicted that Conte wasn't going to change tactics. He was going to do, you know, plan A, and he went with plan A. And that first half, it panned out that way, didn't it? Arsenal had the possession. They looked quite good. But every time Tottenham kind of got the out ball and every time Tottenham did counter, they did look a bit dangerous. Niro, were you, in that first half, did you think that Arsenal were going to suffer for perhaps picking Zinchenko over maybe a bit more of a defensive-minded Tierney?
I think you asked me as well just before the game what I think it was like 2 minutes before the team came out, wasn't it? We were sort of having our predictions in terms of what our starting lineup would be, or we'd hope would be. I think back at that point, I did say I would rather us keep our same 11. So that would have meant sort of Zinchenko, Ben White, you know, this 11 that's been sort of seems to be Arteta's first 11 choice at the moment. But so, yeah, that's what I thought at the time. In hindsight, I don't know, you know, obviously Zinchenko coming back from that injury, sort of was he put into quickly? No, defensively, he wasn't great defensively, and, you know, he made a few, you know, misplaced passes as well, sort of across the game. So obviously it's easy to say in hindsight, yeah, maybe, you know, Tierney would have been the sort of better option there, more from a defensive point of view. But I can see why Arteta did go for Zinchenko at the end. Obviously, he offers that sort of bit extra. He can sort of go into the midfield, allow, you know, effectively allow Xhaka to have a sort of free reign in a way when we're attacking. So, which I think Tierney is sort of starting to do, but obviously he's not there yet, personally, from that perspective. From an attacking perspective. But yeah, I think, well, end of the day, we won the game, so we can't, you know, when we win, it's easy to sort of say tactics were right. But yeah, the only thing I would say is Arteta went for the, you know, tried and tested in a way what's working for him. But I don't know what the fitness levels were of Zinchenko, so maybe that might have played a part in the performance.
It's true. And you know, I think you make a point there about, you know, at the end of the day we won. Perhaps it's worth just taking a step back on that and coming out of the detail for a second, right? At the end of the day, we won, and we won the North London derby. I know we usually do well at the Emirates, but a lot was made up before the game that this is probably the best that Arsenal and Tottenham have been going into a North London derby in terms of being first and third respectively in the league. I think that I think maybe the season that Leicester won the league was the only time I can think that Arsenal and Tottenham were both kind of in that sort of top sort of 3 sort of slots playing each other. Mize, you know, is it? Let's take a step back, right? Forget all the detail. A lot has been made this season of the fact that Arsenal's fixtures have been straightforward, you know, in inverted commas. And I know we lost away at United, but, you know, these kind of smash and grab teams, they'll get a result every now and again, you know. So you have to accept that. Tottenham was on paper like, you know, the big kind of the big test. No doubt, if Tottenham had have won, no doubt would the media have turned around and said, "See, Arsenal failed their big test against the big teams, so this is who they are." What do you think this victory means, mate? What has it told you anything about the team, and what do you think what kind of message has it sent to others?
So I think for me, I don't think it's told me much more about the team and what Arteta wants from the team and kind of the level of performance that this team can reach. I don't think it showed me much more. Look, I think on the face of it, if you take away the fact there was a North London derby and you take away the fact there was a derby, the rivalry and all that, it was first versus, I think they were third before the start of the game. They hadn't lost a game this season. And if they won, they were going to go above us. So if you just look at it on the merits of both teams, it's a fantastic win. It's a huge win. I'm not saying that this is going to be like a title challenge, a title kind of 6-pointer come the end of the season or anything like that. But at the same time, you know, it's a huge win from that perspective. So, but and from that perspective, it is extremely impressive. But I think from my perspective as a fan, having obviously watched us all season and kind of seeing what we've been building towards for the last couple of years under Arteta, I'm not sure, like I say, it shows me or tells me that much more. I think if you're outside of Arsenal, i.e. media, a non-biased fan, whatever, then maybe they might look at it and think, oh, Arsenal beat Tottenham. They've actually, as you say, Raj, they've actually beat a proper team or a decent team. But, you can see in the Premier League, right? Like Liverpool drop points again at the weekend, and all season, teams have been dropping points. The bigger teams have been dropping points in games that you might say they should win. And that's just not the case in the Premier League, as we know, right? There's no easy game pretty much, and there's no guaranteed 3 points. So ultimately, we're doing what we should be doing. I think where we're really going to see what this team is made of and what this squad is made of is obviously going to be kind of post World Cup, second half of the season. We're going to get, injuries, as everyone is, but, how are certain players going to come back? The players that do go to the World Cup, how are they going to come back? What sort of condition they're going to be in? How are we going to cope with, hopefully getting further into the other cup competitions? All of that kind of stuff, and the fixture congestion. We've already got what game is it? The Everton game, is it? No, what game have we got to reschedule? There's a game.
The Everton game.
Everton game, yeah. So there's all of that, and I think that's when we'll probably be able to see our true level. I'm not saying that we're first on merit, of course, but I don't think any sane Arsenal fan expects us to be there, apart from Aaron, expects us to be there come May. So yeah.
Niro, there's themes of go on, mate.
Sorry. I was just gonna, in a counter to that sort of discussion. Obviously for me, not in North London derby is the biggest game of the season for me. So obviously the win is a great win, but for me, I don't think the win on Saturday was for me the biggest in terms of showing the character of the team, because I always feel that North London derby, the players are always pumped up, and generally we normally do really well against Spurs at home anyway. So for me, that wasn't the biggest sort of happy or biggest sort of achievement from Arsenal. For me, it's more playing against like Crystal Palace away, where we've historically lost those games. Winning the games against the so-called sort of smaller teams, where usually we just look complacent or we don't look up for the game, or take it too easy. So I think for me this season, it's just winning those other games. Is for me where we've made the biggest step up from sort of prior seasons, and I think that's where will sort of help us get to the top. Losing to your big four rivals away is obviously not ideal, but I don't think that necessarily will make the difference to us as long as we carry on beating the teams that on paper we are stronger than, and go in and show our quality and show our class and be 100% from kickoff.
Well said. I think it's definitely true, actually. It's hard to argue with that, especially because actually even last season and our home record was quite good. I very rarely go to the Emirates feeling nervous. I always feel like we're going to be on the front foot. And it is those away games, like you said, the Palace game, I think set the tone for the season, didn't it? It's just, and even going to Brentford and, those games are so important to just get something out of, and then coming out with 3 points in games like that, totally important. So completely agree. And on some of the themes that Myers was saying, we're good merit for it, aren't we, Niro? Like we deserve to be top. There's not, it doesn't matter what way you cut it. We're top of the league, and actually even prior to the Tottenham game, when a lot of analysis was done around our fixtures versus fixtures that others around us have played, and actually there's not a great deal of evidence to suggest that we've had it that much easier. The average position of the team that we had played is higher than some of our rivals. So yeah, it may not last forever, but Niro, this team are showing signs of repeatable good habits, aren't they? I mean, we are. Tell me a bit about what you think about our attacking output. Mice said before something which I think is extraordinary but true, which is that he's pointing out our two wide players, saying our two wide players basically haven't exploded yet.
Yeah,
but we're top of the league, right? So it's, again, I'm not trying to get carried away here, but there's something that collectively they're doing very well, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously last couple of years we were sort of relying on Saka so much, and it's such a big sort of expectation on his sort of young shoulders, isn't it? So I think it's good for him as well that he's away from the limelight and develop in his own pace without having that pressure. And I think, as you said, whatever the system is currently happening now, it's definitely working. Now we're getting, obviously, out front. Obviously, we had a bit less output in the last sort of couple of seasons. Now we're getting Jesus is now firing, providing goals. And I think now with whatever he's done with Xhaka, for me, it's just been brilliant. Like, he's now been given a sort of free reign going forward. He's always in the box. He's creating chances, getting goals. Odegaard can chip in with a couple now. Set piece wise, our centre backs are sort of getting goals from corners. So I feel like that is helping, because I think before, like, to win a game, we needed like everyone to be performing. Whereas like now it's, Odegaard, might not have a great game. Like, I don't think it was his best game against Spurs, but we know we've now got goals and options coming from other areas. So we're not so, reliant on individual players like we used to be. And I think that's great, because now it feels like a actual sort of team sort of performance. And, we can, anyone can sort of win the game for us. We've got sort of multiple match winners now, which is, I think, a sort of bigger difference from where we were before.
Completely agree with you. A couple of comments coming through on the screen at the moment. Chan is asking about whether our Tottenham friend who joined us in the last episode is showing up today. I don't think he's going to be showing up anywhere where there's any Arsenal fans for a little while, to be honest. And deservedly so. I mean, he thought that we were going to get rolled over, and that was just a nonsense thing to say, wasn't it? Tish Eats with the comment here. Biggest improvement this year is when we concede, our heads are not dropping. We are looking to pounce straight away. Done this against Leicester, Fulham, Villa, Spurs. Myers, what do you got to say about that?
It's a good point, and it's a good point to point out because we didn't really talk about it. I guess it's become a bit of a trait of ours, hasn't it? And I think the fantastic thing for us, all three of us were there on Saturday, and we've pretty much been there all, every game this season, every home game this season. It's as Tish says, it's that kind of resilience that the team is showing. But I feel like the crowd, the Emirates crowd is, for me, when Spurs equalized on Saturday, my head really dropped. Like, my head really drops, and I thought, shit, like, as I said before, I was really worried about how many times Spurs seem to be able to get their outball, and there was a couple of times. There was one occasion when Lloris had the ball, he played it out to one of the Spurs defenders. It went out to Son, and Son was, it wasn't through on goal, but he was in a really, really dangerous position. It was 2 passes from the goalkeeper, and that seemed to happen quite a bit. And then they scored, and then, my head dropped. But then very, very quickly, within 5-10 seconds, you just heard the Emirates crowd just start to really, really get behind the team, as we've seen quite a few times this season. Whenever we've gone behind or conceded a goal. And like I say, I completely agree with Tish. It's a fantastic trait to have. Again, it will be interesting to see, if there's probably going to be a situation further down the season, tough away game, and quite possibly, if we go 1-0 down, 2-0 down, whatever, or concede a goal at kind of a bad time, pegging us back, how do the team react? But I think they're showing like serious resiliency and serious team spirit, and also we saw it, which was, I guess, worth touching on, right? That huddle after the Partey goal, that was really interesting as well. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that.
It was difficult to figure out what Xhaka was saying. I don't know if Xhaka was just saying, guys, I can't believe it. He scored a long range shot. I mean, this is just unbelievable. No, but on a serious note,
unbelievable there, wasn't it?
Yeah, we should touch on that in a second, actually. But yeah, you're right, Miles. It says something about the team. I listen. I can be a bit skeptical about stuff like this sometimes. I wonder how much of it is the cameras are watching. It's clear that this is going to be shown on TV and people are going to notice this and it's going to get analyzed, and and I wonder if sometimes that goes through the player's mind how people can perceive that. Listen, I'm being a bit harsh. I think that it is also just another sign of the fact the team is very together. It's very focused. We've got a selection of leaders there. But let's just talk about those 2 central midfielders, right? And let's just talk about the Partey goal for a second. Miles, I think you had said this. You had said this before, right? I think whenever Partey had, I think when he had missed his 500th shot, I think it was you who basically said like, one day one of these is going to go in, and you just like hope it's going to be in one of these like big games, whatever. Because there's always a chance. Do you remember when Willian finally like scored that goal at the at the end of his career at Arsenal, where it was like a most irrelevant goal.
It was a meaningless goal.
And Arteta had this look on his face, just like, okay, like whatever, you absolute clown. And it had that sort of feeling that it could be like that when Partey finally scores. Was it going to be, the 6th goal in a win against some random Europa League club? But it's an absolute banger he scores.
I mean,
right?
The thing is, right? Yeah. At least once a game, he tries that. He tries that shot, like some sort of long range shot. And so obviously in training, he must be smashing the ball from 20, 25 yards every single day. Because otherwise, why would anyone I can't understand why he'd keep trying. I can't understand why Erdegaard or Xhaka or Arteta's telling him like, stop fucking doing that, basically, right? So, so obviously, look, I mean, he's probably not surprised that it's gone in, but I think every single Arsenal fan in the ground, every single Arsenal fan watching must have been amazed. But I mean, look, we got to talk about the goal, because when it happened, I didn't realize how good of a strike it was. Like, obviously, it was a great goal, and you could see it was a great goal, but you can't and I probably didn't even see the replays because we were celebrating. I didn't see the replays on the screen, but it was only when I watched the highlights back, funnily enough, just before we recorded, I was like, bloody hell, like that's a seriously, seriously good goal. And I mean, I watched the highlights of Match of the Day, and Jonathan Pierce it was just like, oh yeah, it's a good decent strike. Good goal. There was no kind of, like, I think if De Bruyne scores that, or anyone else pretty much, so, but I mean, it was due, wasn't it? It was really, really was due. I think that's his 3rd goal for the club. Can't remember the other 2 he scored, to be honest. I think one was a header last season. And it was definitely due, but I'm happy if that's his kind of only long range strike and long range attempt for the rest of the season.
Sorry for Spurs, didn't you? Because Spurs were basically like, they were sitting off so deep. I probably just thought, what's this guy going to do? I mean, like, where's the ball going to
go for it? Yeah.
It's not going to go down. Exactly. I mean, look, it was interesting. Obviously, like Miles, like you said, just going back to what you had said before about when Tottenham scored and kind of heads going down and the way that we sort of just bounced back and the team and the fans just kind of bounced back. Scoring so early in the second half is super helpful. No need to really analyze that goal aside from, I guess, it's just sentiment. It was really indicative of the fact that we just kept going and going and going and going, and we were trying to go for it.
The Jesus goal.
The Jesus goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously after the Jesus goal, a little bit after the Jesus goal, there's the sending off that happened. And it's a bit weird, isn't it, Niro? Because from where we were, like you couldn't see what the hell happened, right? You just thought it was like an innocuous foul. No one in the stadium thought it's going to be a red card or whatever. I think everyone was just chatting amongst themselves, thinking, it's a little free kick, and then it's a red card. And obviously, the replays have been shown, and I say it feels like pundits around the world have been relatively divided about this, right? Because I see some pundits are just like Match of the Day were just unequivocally that just like that is a red card. That's definitely a red card. It's just ridiculous. It's stupid. And others haven't been so sure about that. I mean, what did you think about it? And because before you answer, like playing devil's advocate, I remember Arsenal, Man United, and Lokonga did something very, very similar. He did something very similar, and he didn't get sent off for it. And this is obviously it's a straight red. He gets sent off. The referee doesn't even bother actually looking, going to VAR or anything like that. I mean, what did you think? And did you think it had any material impact on the game?
Actually, so first of all, on the back to the Partey goal, apparently that was his 65th attempt from outside the area before his first goal.
Wow.
Back to sending off. As you said, it was on the other side of the pitch, right? So at the time, we had no idea what was going on. Had a mate who sent me obviously a live clip of the incident. On the replay, obviously, we're still in the stadium. It looked quite bad, right? But obviously, with us adrenaline running, you're probably gonna, a bit of bias as well. You thought, we're not sure until you go home and actually see the replay properly. At the point of the game, I had no idea if it was a sending off or not. Then obviously you go home, watch the replays, and to be fair, the more I see it, the more sort of it is a red card. It was so like it just looks a lot higher than I thought it was initially. It's so unnecessary as well because Martinelli was sort of running towards his own goal as well. So I didn't understand what the point of that challenge was.
He's not going for the ball, is he? That's the thing. No, he's nowhere near the ball. He's just trying to.
People have tried to explain it. Almost said like he was probably trying to trip the player up, like he's trying to trip him up, and he's accidentally sort of done that. And whatever you look at it, like you say, it's bizarre. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, but we get that a lot though. I think all season as well. I know again, it might be a bit of bias here, but it just feels like even in the Villa game, like most games we play, it just seems like people are just like trying to take out our players. So from that perspective, I'm glad that he's actually been sent off for that. And then as you sort of mentioned, pundits and other fans sort of saying, that card changed the game, and it's just completely.
Yeah, fairness. I don't think many pundits think it's changed the game. I don't think many, because change the game implies that you're not winning already. Like that doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Like,
or I guess kill the game. Fine, it may have, but it wasn't
like
have
killed the game. Exactly,
they were comfortable, right? It's not like they were, completely overrunning us and that. I'm to that point, except for that 5-10 minutes where they scored. We were defensively a bit all over the place. For the rest of the game, we were completely comfortable, and I couldn't see them really scoring or equalizing at that point. Fine, it might have killed the game, but I personally don't think it was much of a difference. But yeah, as in back to your initial question, it was once I saw it on replay, it was a clear sending off.
Yeah, and Chan here with the comment: didn't he replace Aurier as a right back last season? One disaster right back after another. It's really true, isn't it? It's a really weird one because Emerson Royale was signed a couple of days, I think, before Arsenal signed Tomiyasu, and it seems like Tomiyasu was someone that Spurs were tracking. Feels like therefore they could have got him if they wanted to, because we kind of pulled the trigger quite late on that. But there is no debate in my mind as to which one of those right backs is a better right back. I don't think there's one element of Emerson Royale's game that I think is better. I mean, I think he's allegedly supposed to be an attacking right back. I've never looked at him as an attacking right back and thought that this guy's impressive. I mean, it's a bit confusing, isn't it? I mean, like, because he essentially just does not look like an upgrade on Aurier. I mean, Mai's like, what? If you look at actually some of their signings recently from a defensive standpoint, I know like Romero has been, a lot has been made out of his quality, but Lenglet was similarly really average against us. A bit. Does that confuse you a little bit? How they've not been getting it right in the market there?
So yeah, Lenglet, however you say his name. I remember seeing him, like, obviously I don't watch Barcelona that often, but I remember seeing him last season and or in previous seasons, and he's always just looked like a bit of a calamity player. So I was pretty shocked that they went for him. Emerson Royale, like I've heard the same, that he's just he's meant to be good going forward. And to be fair, I think there's been a few times this season I've seen him play or seen Spurs play, and he does seem to be able to get kind of like he's one of these players that I guess once he's in the final third, he can look a bit dangerous. He can get a ball in the box, that kind of thing.
I mean, Carl Jenkinson did that.
True. But did he support Tottenham when he was a kid? So yeah, but anyway, am I surprised with their signings? I don't know. Is it more a case of they're just finding players to fit the system, and therefore they're just sort of stocking up on wing backs? Like they've got Doherty, they've got Emerson Royale, they've got God, I can't even remember who's their left wing back.
Jed Spence and
Perisic, obviously, as a Perisic. Like I can see, like I remember when Conte was at Chelsea and Victor Moses became like this unbelievable right wing back, and where the hell is he? Like,
signing for Inter.
Oh yeah, he's signing for Inter, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, fine, fair enough. But you know what I mean, right? Like a bit of a random kind of. But yeah, obviously Conte has the ability to do this. I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to get something out of some of these players. But I just wanted to touch on something because you were talking about kind of Spurs fans or media sort of saying, the sending off was pivotal, and yeah, it's quite funny, Niro, because I've spoken to a couple of Spurs people and they've like friends, and they said the same thing, and I'm just sort of like, like it just amazes. Like Spurs fans just amaze me. Like Arsenal fans get a bad rep, right? And probably based off Arsenal fan TV, right? Like, let's be honest. So for some reason, people think that represents the entire fan base. Okay, fine, whatever. But Spurs fans are just unbelievable because so I was out all day yesterday, and I was at like a family thing, and I was with one of my nephews. He's like 16. He's a Man United fan. Anyway, one of his like kind of uncles, Asian community uncles, comes up, says bye to him, and then he points over to me and says, "Oh, he's an Arsenal fan." Like says to his uncle, "He's an Arsenal fan," to me, as in pointing at me. So I had no idea who this guy supports. I just thought he's telling them I'm an Arsenal fan, whatever. And then the guy comes over and goes, he says something like, "Oh yeah, there's a couple of you, isn't there?" I was like, "Okay, that's a weird comment." I was like, "Don't tell me you support Spurs. Don't tell me you support Spurs." And then he comes across like, "Probably, yeah, I do." And I was like, "Okay, if you want to walk away now, you can. It's up to you." Like, this is a day after we've just beaten you. And then he just starts giving it for no reason. And he's like, "Oh yeah, but like Champions League, innit?" I'm like, "Trophies, innit? Like, what do you want me to say to you?" And then he pretty much just walked off. And I was just like, it's just like unbelievable. Like even Jason the other day, like when Jason came on the show, I didn't really say anything. I let him, because he joined a bit late, let him kind of say what he wanted to say. Didn't really respond, didn't really engage with him, as it were. Just wanted to see how the game went, to be honest. But like they come on and they're so cocky, but I just can't understand what you've got to be cocky about. Like I get why Man United fans can be cocky, even though we don't, it's a bit extreme to still be cocky about what Ferguson did or whatever, but they have a recent history of being very, very successful, the most successful team in the country for probably 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. So fair enough. But Spurs fans have got nothing. They've literally got nothing, but yet they still think that they're this I don't know, it's mental. I just find it amazing. And that, how can they say that the sending off changed the game? Like, surely no one really thinks that.
It's the same way as us saying the Rob Holding sending off changed the game when we played them.
No, they beat us. They beat us.
We said on our podcast, despite all the abuse that we got from Tottenham fans, we all said Tottenham were the better team and deserved to win that game.
Yeah,
right. We can admit that. Right. Like these guys need to just take the L. They got battered. There was one very good team that day that played a team that was very negative and tried to do their thing, but it didn't pay off. And Charles right, golden boots are trophies in their eyes. I mean, at the end of the day, when we were winning trophies, we were winning golden boots as well. That's just a bit on the side, right? Do you know what I mean?
If it wasn't for Haaland, I wouldn't be surprised if Jesus wins it. This would have won it this season. So
exactly. But it takes an absolute cyborg to take that away from Jesus this season. It looks like. But anyway, look, getting back to that point, right? It is very funny with kind of Tottenham fans at the moment, and maybe we should indulge a bit on it because Jason did come on our show. We invited him on our show, and he talked a lot of big things, and it's unsubstantiated nonsense because there's not at least when we are analysing Arsenal, we are genuinely there talking about, look, this is how it could go wrong. This is how it could go right. This is things that we're doing well. This is things that are not whatever. But, we're not predicting games, coming up with random kind of scenarios of, do you know what? Actually, if we play 5 in attack, then I reckon we'll win. Do you know what I mean? And it's just with Spurs, there's always some reason. There's always some random reason why it's not why it's outside of their control. There's always some reason why actually they're really, really good. But at the end of the day, what happens on the pitch proves it, right? If you win a game, generally speaking, the best team wins the game, and that's just how it is. And then you've just got to take it, and you've got to analyze it, you've got to digest it. And at the end of the day, I think us as Arsenal fans, we're having a good season. We're really, really pleased about it. We're really excited that this could go somewhere. But we'll wait and see how it goes. Right? We'll wait till the end of the season and see what's on the trophy cabinet. Because if there aren't any trophies, then I'm sure we'll still want to finish in the top 4. But at the same time, right? There are aspirations and there's pedigree, and like you say, they've got nothing. They've got nothing to be shouting about, to be quite honest. But look, it's great. Listen, fantastic to win. Fantastic to win the North London derby. We've got a couple of games this week. It's a busy week. It's Monday today, and we play on Thursday, and we play on Sunday. Niro, tell me, give me everything that you know about Bodo Glimt.
I'm going to say silent for this one. Yeah, I think they won their league last year, didn't they?
I don't even know what kind.
So I think the 3 teams in our league have all won their league. And then
really? Is that true?
Yeah.
I don't even know what country they're from.
Group of champions.
What country are they from?
So Bodo Glimt are
Norway,
and they're second in Norway.
You just googled that,
I did my research for the episode, indeed. No, the reason, do you know, the reason why I knew that they were Norwegian is when I first heard when we drew them and they said they're Norwegian, I was like, oh, that's where Graham Potter was Ostersund, right? And I was pretty sure that they were Norwegian. But then I looked them up in the league, and then they're not in the top division. So then I began to question whether they were actually in the Norwegian league or not, or was it the Swedish league?
The Swedish,
exactly, yes.
Oh, right,
so that's my long-winded way of saying that's how I remember that they were Norwegian. So anyway, look, they think they're second in the league. Mulder, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's old boys are top of the league, and I think they've won every game, but Bodo is second, and they have played 2 Europa League games this season. Obviously, one of ours got cancelled or postponed rather, and they beat Frankfurt like we did, and they drew with PSV. So it doesn't seem like they're a bad side. Like, at the end of the day, they beat Zurich and sorry, not Frankfurt, so Zurich, obviously. Zurich in our group. They beat Zurich as did we. But Zurich weren't terrible or anything. So and drawing with PSV, so it doesn't seem like it's probably not the sort of game where I imagine that we can put a complete B team out and be totally confident that we'll win. But that being said, Miles, do you think we will put a B team out on Thursday?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm just thinking about who potentially could start. From the first team, given that there's Liverpool on Sunday, I think he can't really take any risks. If you think that Thomas Partey, Ødegaard were sort of slight doubts before the game, before the Spurs game, I'd like to think that they're both going to get a rest, and in general, I think he's probably going to rest most players. Look, it makes sense to keep a couple of senior guys in the team. You can't just play kind of all kids and all like the reserve players. So maybe someone like Xhaka. Xhaka doesn't ever get... Okay, I'm about to jinx it there. But yeah, Xhaka's generally pretty healthy guy. And there might be a couple of other kind of first team or senior heads in there. And you'll probably keep a fairly strong bench just in case, as backup in case we need it. But home game against, regardless of how they've done so far in the Europa League, I can't really... We should just be finishing that game off in the first half and scoring the goals we need to, and then just taking our foot off the pedal. And it should be on paper anyway. It should be a straightforward night. So I'd like to think he's swapping a number of players out shouldn't really affect us too much.
It's interesting, isn't it, Niro? Because obviously this would have been another nice game for ESR to get some minutes and still stay fresh. And he was also a really good rotation. For those wide positions, and now without him, do you think it gets a little bit interesting? Or in the sense that, do you think that we end up having to give the likes of Saka and Martinelli more time in the Europa League games and the cup games that we would have liked to, or is Reece Nelson going to get a rebirth kind of in the wide areas? What do you reckon?
I think, personally, if I was obviously Arteta, we've got 9 games in October, so literally 4 weeks in a row we got Thursday, Sunday. So for me, completely agree with Myers. Like, I would rotate majority of the players. You'd want a leader there, so you might keep a Xhaka there, and so completely agree with that. And to be honest, like, we've got I'm more excited, like, sort of this season watching the Europa League than I have been in sort of previous seasons, because the previous seasons it just felt like, Arsenal B are sort of the players who are not good enough for the first team will be playing the Europa League, whereas like your Lichtsteiners and whatnots, and whereas now it just feels like all sort of young players, like promising, exciting players. Like, I want to, since the last game, I've been so excited to see like Marquinhos again, right? I want to see what he can sort of produce again. Another run for Vieira, for example. So me personally, like I would give all the youngsters more of a run out. It's interesting. Like Reece Nelson just came out of nowhere, right? Just didn't know where. Didn't know where he was last few weeks. So maybe again, I guess with Smith Rowe, maybe Arteta has been thinking ahead for this sort of Europa League game and obviously bench for the future Premiership games as well. So I think Reece Nelson probably would sort of get the nod along with Marquinhos on the wide and then Eddie up front. I think that's like exciting to watch, to be honest, that attack.
And like you say, that lineup that Niro sort of describing, that should be good. That should be good enough to get a result, right?
It should be good enough. And I think we saw against Zurich, right? Like these guys stepped in. I'm just looking at the team now. I mean, he still started Gabriel, Martinelli, Xhaka, Tomiyasu, Rob Holding, Kieran Tierney. You still got some fairly senior guys in there. Eddie Nketiah scored a goal. As Niro said, Marquinhos looked really exciting. So there's, absolutely, there should be more than enough. It should be more than enough, like I said. And I think I completely agree with Niro as well, right? There's some really kind of exciting talent within the squad. Marquinhos and Vieira, Niro highlighted them. They're probably the two standout ones where you kind of like, you want to see them get Premier League minutes now.
Yeah.
But we haven't had the games yet or whatever, and I think at some point this season they will. Obviously, Vieira definitely will, and maybe unexpectedly Marquinhos might as well. But like as Niro said, like that's probably the most exciting thing about these Europa League games is like seeing the kind of I don't want to say the B team, but the guys that are ready to come in as and when we need them to. I mean, look, I don't think I'm 100% expecting a comfortable win on Thursday. If that doesn't happen, then if we don't get the win, then that'll be a big disappointment. Especially considering it's our second game as well. We kind of want to just get the wins now, get qualified, get first place, and focus on other priorities. Really,
is there an argument also to say, right, that some of these players, like our first team in inverted commas players, they need to start getting used to the fact that they're going to need to play 2 games a week. Because when we go into the Champions League, we can't be playing our B team every Champions League game, right? So this has got to be something that we start getting used to, right?
Probably more from a squad perspective, right? So, like, say, as you mentioned, the fullbacks, like playing Tierney and then Zinchenko on a Thursday and Sunday. Either way, it still feels like sort of first team players, doesn't it? So I think part of that will be sort of building a squad where he can rotate. Doesn't really matter who's starting ahead of who. You can sort of like how Man City, obviously they're the perfect team. Yeah. They can literally interchange between anyone. To be fair with Liverpool, with their attack to an extent as well, they could start Firmino one day and then bench him next day, and they still got quality to replace it. So I think it's more about building the squad, and I think part of that is with Arteta, maybe he still feels that the sort of the backup players are maybe not too good enough yet to be able to sort of bring them into the game early enough so that they get rested a bit more. So I think he makes obviously a bit more later changes. He brought in Lokonga on this time earlier because the game was pretty much won. But he doesn't feel like he trusts sort of a player like that early, in a game. Usually, if the game's hanging by a knife edge.
Well, it's kind of connected to Gavin's point here. So, Gavin's point here is saying, I remember back in the day where Arsenal would let the youth play the cup games. We got some strong youth talent, let them go out and see what they can do. So true, right? You think back to those good days. Do you remember in the Carling Cup, etc., where we would routinely beat one team 6-0 every season. It would Sheffield United, a Wigan, or someone like that. We'd go out and win 6-0. Carlos Vela, I remember hat trick from him. And,
Jeff Rene
Adelaide. Jay Simpson. I remember he scored
Arturo Lipoli. Classic.
I remember Ramsey scored that amazing back heel once. It was really good times back in those days. But what's interesting, I was just thinking about that now when I was reading Gavin's comment, and we were playing Champions League football every year those days, right? And so actually in the Champions League, it was still like our first team that were playing in the Champions League. So we were, our first team were used to playing 2 games a week, and it was the sort of early stage FA Cup and the Carling Cup games where we used to see these players. You sort of think now that we're in the Europa League, maybe the group stage of the Europa League at home is when we can start trying to see some of these guys. You like to think at home, if you can mix it up a little bit, why not play Ethan Nwaneri? You know, why not start with him or someone like that? I'm not sure he will. And I think it probably goes to your point, Myers, around trying to get the points as quickly as you possibly can. Like, and then maybe once you've qualified, maybe once you've figured that you're top of the group, you know, then play some kids in the final, like, you know, 1 or 2 games. But obviously, you know what, like, without being complacent and taking our eye off it, it's hard to not have one eye on the Liverpool game on Sunday, right? It is another huge game. It's another huge, huge game. And it's going to be, in my view, a bigger test than the Tottenham game for a couple of reasons, actually. One relates to what Niro said earlier, which is that I think in the North London derby, there's something about it which kind of just gets the players and gets everyone buzzed. It's that extra like release of energy that, you know, kind of not necessarily papers over cracks, but that adrenaline gets players through and that the occasion can make a difference. Liverpool's a little bit different. Obviously, it's still a big game, but it hasn't got quite the history or whatever. And, you know, Liverpool are a team historically over the last number of years that, you know, we generally get pasted by. And even when it's at the Emirates, I can't remember the last time. Well, actually, so I think we won a couple of seasons ago when Liverpool had already won the league. So that doesn't even count. You know, they can be bothered.
Reece Nelson scored in that game.
Reece Nelson scored that. It's true. Good point. Yeah, well remembered, Miles. Miles, you know, though, this is the first time, though, I can remember in a long time that the bookies are making Arsenal out to be the favourites against Liverpool in a Premier League match. I can't digest that. For me, Liverpool are still one of the 2 top best teams in the league. I still believe that, right? And I still, you know, despite the fact that, and you know, I don't think I actually realised how few points they've managed to accumulate this season. Despite their challenging start to the season, I still think they're just like total quality. And I do not consider us favourites going into Sunday. But am I being cautious? Do you feel the same way? What do you think?
I mean, I'm just getting over Saturday, to be honest. So trying to now think about another massive game. It's a weird one because Liverpool this season, it just feels like Liverpool can be got at. And we are the kind of team, the way we're playing now, I feel like we're the kind of team that can get at Liverpool, if that makes sense. Like, I think we're going to come out quite similar to like the Spurs game. To be honest, you asked me the question earlier about, you know, what change has the result from the Spurs game kind of made on you, or impact has it made on you as a, you know, in terms of my perception of the season and stuff. And I guess the one thing it has given me is probably confidence. It's definitely given me confidence going into the next game. I think if we'd have lost against Spurs, I'd be obviously coming, you know, the whole discussion today would be different, but just the going into the Liverpool game, it would be pretty much the opposite, right? And I think from the players' perspective, from Arteta's perspective, he's probably just going to be saying to them, look, you know, they conceded 3 against Brighton. Go out and do the same thing again. You know, go out and do the same thing and start the game with the intent of you want to get the first goal, you want to score you want to score goals, you know. And I feel like defensively they're a little bit susceptible. Obviously, look, we know how good Liverpool are, and it's not like everyone's still expecting them to come back this season. And, you know, maybe anyone challenging the City this season is going to be too much of a stretch. They just look unbelievable. They look unreal. So, but you still expect Liverpool to probably fairly comfortably finish in the top 4. I do anyway. I think they've got too much quality to not. But in terms of Sunday, I think it's probably one of the best. Like, if you're going to ask, when do you want Liverpool at home in your season, now is probably the best time. Like, considering what we're just coming off, assuming nothing goes horribly wrong on Thursday and there's not like 3 or 4 injuries or whatever, it's probably one of the best times to ask to play them, really. You know, they don't look as convincing as they have in previous seasons. And I think we can. I'm not saying we're going to win the game. And I personally don't think we're going to win the game. I think it'll be a draw. But I think we can absolutely go into it with full confidence and just kind of like full energy, really, to just try and take the game to them and see what they've got, you know, see what they've got. Whereas, like you say, Raj, previous seasons, previous kind of matchups, like, do you remember Aaron's wedding last year? We obviously got absolutely smashed by them again at Anfield. But it's kind of like, I think there was a period, I can't remember now, I think because obviously we didn't watch it, but I think there was a period of the game
we were
where it was 0-0 a bit. Yeah, okay. Aaron, his missus doesn't know that, you know. Yeah, and there was a period of the game where I think it was quite tight. I could be wrong on this, but
yeah, no, you're right, because they scored their first goal only at 40 minutes or something.
Yeah, and after that, it just went to shit. But I guess up until that point, we had that optimism. I think, but it was always like, okay, let's hold on to the 0-0. Let's hold on to the draw. Let's see what we can get. Let's see what we can get out of the game. But I think this game we approach completely differently. And if you think how good the atmosphere has been up until like the last season, this season so far, the atmosphere has been just unreal. And I know fans of other clubs will probably look at it and think, what are you talking about? The Emirates is shit, whatever. That's fine. Okay. But we know how good it's been, right? We've been backing the team. It has been unbelievable.
Yeah. Most people who say stuff like that, by the way, don't go to games.
No, they don't. Yeah, we could talk about that for a while. But yeah, so I just think obviously, look, it's a Sunday evening game or Sunday late kickoff, whatever. You know, fans, we are going to be fully up for it. Everyone's going to be amped up. Everyone's going to have been at the pub pretty much the whole day. So yeah, I'm expecting a really, really good atmosphere as well. And that potentially could play quite a big factor, as we keep saying. So I'm sort of, I don't necessarily agree with the bookies. I don't think we're favourites to win. I think it's a pretty even contest, but I don't think we're going to get trashed. I don't think we're going to get trashed. Like I'm going for a draw personally. I think it'll be a tight game again, is what I kind of said against Spurs as well. And I think it'll be a draw.
No, do you agree with that? It's been, it's Arsenal this season, even the one game that we lost, the one game we lost, we had 16 shots on goal. And we generally have around 20, around that 20 mark per game. Like Mice kind of said about a good time to play Liverpool, you really feel like if you're a team who are a bit frail in terms of the defensive organisation, if you're not quite on point at the moment, Arsenal are probably the worst team that you want to play right now, right? Because we are just, regardless of whether we haven't got a Haaland, we haven't necessarily, some of our attacking players haven't exploded yet, but we are bloody just everywhere, in that final third at the moment, aren't we? I mean, do you agree with Mize's sort of assessment of the game?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think I'm probably a bit more sort of pessimistic than Mize. I think I'll be happy with the draw. I think, again, these kind of games, like it's not an NLD, but it's a form book kind of goes out the window, and it's a big sort of game. One thing I sort of agree, the home fans will play such a big part. So remember the game you were sort of referring to at last year, Liverpool at Anfield. I think it was a tight affair, and I think it was that game when I think Arteta and Klopp got into their little kerfuffle, didn't they? And then the Anfield crowd went crazy, and we just crumbled. So I think we need to create that atmosphere on Sunday again. But I just feel like, I don't know, it's me being super critical of Arsenal here, but every game we have sort of dominated possession and looking brilliant on a going forward in an attacking sense, but I still don't feel that we have been that clinical. I think obviously, again, I'm not being overly critical, but it is obviously, I understand it's a journey. We are going to get there, eventually we can sort of see what Arteta is building. But as good as we are with the ball, I still think there is a lot of elements that we need to work when we don't have the ball. And I think against like someone Liverpool, they're going to be, pressing us, suffocating us, which is what they usually do. And when we do make those mistakes, they are going to be more clinical than Charles has that chance, which he, great save by Ramsdale. But I can imagine, give Liverpool any sort of half a chance, right? Regardless of how good or how poor they've been form-wise, Salah can finish off a chance. They've got quality everywhere where, they can punish us for us not doing great. And I don't think we're still as clinical as we need to be. So, and I sort of agree with Stu there. Yotta's always gave us a bit of a nightmare last year as well, didn't he? So, that's why obviously I'll take I'd love to win, and I think if we were to win, we need, the crowd need to get back behind the team, and we need to start off like we did against Spurs. But we just need to just try and eliminate all those sort of, defensive errors, really.
Yeah, agree with you. And, all the comments that are coming through, Stu MC had some comments, Gavin as well. I think just, suggesting that Liverpool is going to be a much bigger test than Tottenham was. And it's hard to disagree regardless of the league position, because this isn't a team that are just playing a system and getting some rewards at the moment. Liverpool are a team who have won trophies. These players have won things. Like, I mean, I'm
not quality. Love it. Clip that up.
They're actually a good team, though. Like, it's not a joke. Like, as in, these are players who actually have done something. That these are players that, like, our players should be looking up to and thinking that these are the sort of players that we want to emulate. And I think one of the reasons why Liverpool have achieved those things is when they do come under pressure in big games, I think they take it up that extra level. I think they their quality, their focus, everything that kind of that shows. Just looking at Stu's comment here, and tactically, I think Klopp offsets the fullbacks. One sits with the opposing flank attacks because he can't afford to have both high and wide. Well, chiefly Trent. Yeah, I get his point. I mean, it's really interesting what Liverpool do with their fullbacks, isn't it? And I think I think sorry, Stu, again, an additional comment which is a good one and very topical at the moment. Stu says, if Trent gets Martinelli on his recent form, though, he may require ankle reconstruction. It's true, isn't it? Like, Trent is getting a lot of stick at the moment, actually, and
mate, I love Trent.
Yeah,
let's
talk about it. So, like, so basically, Klopp gave an interview the other day, which I really liked, because I don't think managers do this enough. And it was sort of, I think you guys might have seen some of it. It was when they asked him about Southgate not picking Trent, and he sort of said, "Do you want to open that box? Do you really want to open that box?" And then he sort of went into it a bit. But I really liked what he said, in the sense that, and he said it in a bit of a frustrated way, but I think he deserves to be a bit frustrated sometimes. When journalists say stuff like this, what he was trying to explain is, Liverpool play a system. They play a very specific system, and all their players have very specific instructions. And to get Trent Alexander-Arnold's attacking output, which he sees as a requirement for their team to achieve the objectives that they want to and win the trophies that they want to, etc., for him to be able to do that, he has to get himself into positions where it's going to be actually pretty hard to recover from, but actually it's okay, because you have other players who are supposed to do other things to be able to compensate for that. And you know what? Sometimes he's going to get caught out, but it's okay, because that's a risk you take to fulfill his attacking potential. And what Klopp is effectively saying here as well is, it's not his fault, it's my fault. I'm telling him to do that. So it's not his fault. And if it is that he's getting exposed, it's because either I haven't calibrated everything else in the right way, or other players aren't necessarily doing what I've told them to do. And I think that's really good, because I think that is a good reminder, right, of even us as Arsenal fans, when we're critical of some players. We did it against, with Holding against Spurs last season. But sometimes, some people have been critical about Ben White, like this season, in his positioning, some ways or whatever. It's very hard to know what's the player and what's the manager, right? What has the manager kind of asked or whatever. And you're talking about Trent, and I guess the point is, a lot has been made out about Trent and the fact that people seem to be getting behind there. You're a big Trent fan, as you said. I mean, do you think it's a case where actually it's other players who just aren't necessarily covering, and it's not to do with Trent?
Yeah, and I think there's a big Van Dijk factor, which I don't know why it's not really being talked about that much, but I feel like Van Dijk is nowhere near the level of play he was pre his injury last season. I think it was the big injury he had. Was it last season before, whenever it was? I just feel like he is not at the same level, and obviously he plays right alongside Trent, and I think that's having an impact. But I think, look, just I mean, look, I know we're not going to talk about Liverpool in too much depth, but just specifically on Trent, like, you've just got to look at kind of what he offers. He's got his deficiencies, fine, okay, and yeah, as you said, Raj, the system that Liverpool play means that he's probably quite likely to kind of almost be the fall guy. He's the guy that's going to get exposed a fair bit, and that's almost maybe something that Liverpool have been able to cope with up until now, and maybe this season it's being seen a bit more than it's being exposed a bit more than it has been previously. But if you think about what this guy's offered Liverpool, considering I don't know how old he is, like 21, 22, 23, whatever, he's like right at the start of his career pretty much. He's won everything in the game already. He's been probably the best right back in the world, arguably. Maybe you could look at like Hakimi, and there's probably a couple of other players. But like, he'd walk into pretty much any team in the league. Like, I feel like he gets a lot of stick. Like the whole England thing is ridiculous for me. Like how he's in. I mean, to not get potentially not be in the squad for the World Cup is just mental. It's just mental. Like I can't believe that he's just such a talented player. Like his right foot is like a wand. He's one of those players where 10 minutes to go, 20 minutes to go, you've got Harry Kane in the box. You just want him on a set piece. You want him. He's the guy you want when you need a goal. He's the guy you want. Putting the ball in the box because he's gonna pick the man out. He's gonna pick the striker out. He's gonna put it on a plate for, Harry Kane, whoever. So, maybe not going through the best of times at the moment, but overall, I think he's just a quality player. Like I'd love him at Arsenal. I can't believe anyone wouldn't want. Trent
I think as you said, he's 23 years old, and look what he's won already. And he's just, he's just been this amazing phenomenon, like over the last however many seasons.
From Southgate's perspective, though, you'd expect. I think I can see why Southgate would prefer a right back which has a better defensive qualities and attacking qualities, knowing the whole defensive mindedness that Southgate offers. But I understand from my perspective, you'd want when you're 1-0 down, then you'd want to throw on someone like Trent. So I can see why. But I mean, look, mate, if he's playing, why he would have started him, but you need him in the squad, in my opinion.
If he's playing, okay, so yeah, fine. Look, the England chat is like maybe a separate episode. But if he's playing 3 at the back, because we don't have the centre backs to play a 4-4-2, to play 2 at the back. If you're playing 3 at the back, Trent is the perfect wing back. Like you can't ask, okay, fine, yeah, defensively, he isn't as good, arguably, as Reece James. He's probably not as good as maybe Kieran Trippier or even Walker. Again, all debatable, to be honest, all of them. But if you're playing a wing back system, if you're any other country going to the World Cup and you're picking, if you could pick a right wing back, you just I can't see anyone picking anyone other than Trent. And it's just mental when you think about it like that Southgate doesn't fancy him. And he's probably going to play 3 at the back for the World Cup.
Yeah, it is mental. And sometimes I wonder whether it's because if he did have better centre backs, would he be willing to play Trent as a fullback? And is it because he sort of looks at it and goes, yeah, well, it's all right for Liverpool because you've got Van Dijk and Matip and see what happens, right? When they're not firing, then he gets exposed. He might even feel vindicated by what he's seeing at Liverpool at the moment. But I think one of the interesting things here, and Stu's really going to town, by the way, in the comments. So Stu's now saying Southgate plums for idiots like Shaw, Maguire, Dyer, etc. You can't play open football with morons like that. I mean, that's true. I mean, that kind of goes to my point, right? In the sense that, that's it's chicken and egg here. Like whether he is picking players like that, and I suppose if you pick players like that, then maybe you can't play such an attacking wing back because your centre backs are like crap. But anyway, what I was going to say is the interesting thing is, right, we've talked a lot about Trent Alexander-Arnold and the defensive kind of side of it, and talking about Liverpool season in that context. But if you look at Liverpool in the league table, right, so Liverpool are 9th right now in the league. What I find amazing, and I know they've played 1 game less than Arsenal, Man City. But they're 11 points behind Arsenal, and it is after 7 or 8 games to be that far off whoever is top is quite crazy, actually. To think, given what a good team they are, and I know there's a lot of football to be played, but that's still quite a lot of points. It'd be really interesting to look at past kind of tables and see kind of how, generally speaking, a team around this time of the season with that much kind of delta, do they ever get to make up to the sort of top 2? But sort of the point I actually wanted to make was less about that, but more about when you actually look at the breakdown, right? Their issue hasn't really been conceding goals. They actually arguably haven't scored enough goals. So they've conceded 9 goals, and that's the same amount of goals conceded as Man City. Brighton have conceded 8, Arsenal have conceded 8, so those Newcastle conceded 8. So 9 goals conceded isn't bad, but the thing is they've scored 18 goals, which in some ways sounds great, but 9 of those, right, were in 1 game. So it's 9 goals across 6 games. Then that isn't, compared to some of their rivals, isn't as a contrast, Man City have scored 29. Arsenal scored 20, and 9 of them didn't come in 1 game. So it's not really the defense that seems to be the challenge, right? It seems like their attacking output seems to be the challenge. And Niro, maybe I'll come to you first on this. They've changed quite a lot recently, and some of it's been forced. Others, seems quite planned. It feels like they've planned to sort of have to refresh their attack because every now and again you have to do this, etc. But they did just lose Mane, and losing big players is always like a bit of a challenge. But does it feel like there's just a bit too much going on that's new?
Yeah, I think obviously, I don't think sort of everyone sort of realised what sort of magnitude of impact like losing Mane would be. I think to the extent, I think quite a lot of people sort of suggest that Mane was probably more sort of focal to their attack compared to like someone like Salah, right? Obviously they brought in Darwin. Everyone thought he was gonna there was argument whether is he gonna whether it's to be him or Haaland who was the better signing. There's a lot of debate about that on sort of social media. And
do you remember the Community Shield?
The Community
when,
Shield.
Like Haaland missed that sitter and Nunes scored, and everyone's like, "Wow, look,
yeah,
he's already won the battle." Jeez, how's that turned out?
Exactly. So I think, and then obviously then he I think it's his second game he got sent off. I think, and he was obviously suspended for a couple of games. Jota's been injured as well. So I think it's too early to write them off for anything. To be honest, I know you said they're 11 points behind us. They're 10 behind City with a game in. Do they have a game in hand against City? Yeah, with a game in hand as well. So they're effectively 7 points, which is this early. This is nothing. And they're still trying to get used to not playing. They still need to get used to the system without Mane bringing in Darwin. The team is still fairly new, so I still think they've still got time to sort of click and sort of gel together and sort of make it work. I think.
But are we Niro like going about this? Because are we saying these things because it's the Liverpool that we've got to know over the last couple of seasons? Like in my mind, I feel like you do, and I feel in my head that Liverpool can just go and win 10 games on the bounce like that, and then it's all just done. But are we judging them based on kind of what we've seen over the last couple of years? And does this look like it's a team in a slightly different phase? Mice talked about Van Dijk kind of not really being the same, and then without Mane and without all these various kind of components being at their peak, if you like.
Yes, I think I mentioned it on Saturday, wasn't it? About that every team goes through their 3-year cycle, and are we coming to the end of the 3-year Liverpool dominance? Do we then need not necessarily a new manager, but new players, fresh ideas? But I always think someone like Liverpool, they've got a squad full of winners, right? And through adversity, that's when there's sort of, I feel that mental strength sort of side of the game will sort of come through when they up against the pressure. I think they will actually start sort of turning it on. I can't really explain why they are where they are at the moment. I you can't just say it's because of one player. And it's just a few months ago they were in the Champions League final, so overnight players don't just go bad. So I think it is just they had a long, tough season last year. I think they were competing for 4 trophies at one point, right? I know they only won 2 at the end, but they played so many games. So I think part of it is probably that they are burnt out from last season, and obviously we had an earlier start this season compared to the normal break we have in the summer. So I do think that player fatigue probably has got a part to do with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Miles. Do you feel the same? I mean, like let's just maybe I'll pivot your additional comments with a prediction as well. How do you see it going on Sunday? What's your prediction?
Yeah, I think it'll be a draw. I think we'll play really well again. I think we'll play really well, but I think ultimately we're coming up against a team that, whichever way you look at it, have been better than us for the last 4 or 5 seasons. I don't know, whatever. Have just been better than us in the recent past, and I think it's a massive game for Liverpool as well, and I think they'll approach it like a massive game. Yeah, I think it'll be a score draw. We can see it being like a 1-1 or a 2-2. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, sorry, I'm just going to add, which I think will still be a fantastic result for Arsenal. I still think that's in the grand scheme of things for our season, that's still a massive. Like, I think that's still a big result, because we were saying before the Spurs game, I predicted a win, but when we were actually walking into the ground and we were, or whatever, but the pub before, I was sort of like, I'm not really sure. And I think I was saying to you guys, I would take a draw against Spurs. And I think, Niro, you were saying, no, Spurs are the team we should win. Liverpool is probably the game where you take a draw, and 4 points is what's acceptable. And obviously now we've beaten Spurs. I'm kind of now in the same mindset where I think you get as long as you don't lose the game, you get a point against Liverpool, and you just carry on. You carry on. I don't know who we've got after Liverpool, but yeah, you just carry on, and you go for 3 points the next game, and it just keeps us ticking over. So
yeah, agreed. I mean, what's your prediction?
Yeah, I think sort of similar. I think probably a 3-3. I think score draw.
Wow.
You've already gone 1-1, 2-2, so I'll go 3-3. I think for us, as I sort of said earlier, it's going to be a tough game. And I think for us, the most important thing, I think, is the performance of sort of Xhaka and Partey again. I think we need to sort of protect the defenders. And if we can stop the ball sort of going past that line and exposing the back five per se, I think we've got a sort of good chance of sort of getting something out of the game. So I think, based on sort of being from a confident point of view, I'll say, a score draw. I think that would be a great result for us if we can get a draw against Liverpool, despite their form.
Other thing I was just going to add, guys, sorry. What's quite good is obviously they've got Champions League this week, right? So really they're going to, he played, I think he rested, maybe not rested, but in terms of tactically, he changed it up a little bit. He played Carvalho, didn't he, as well? And I guess if Jota's back, fine. But I guess fingers crossed for us, they have a tough game against Rangers, and everyone gets injured and they come into the game against us on Sunday with a bit of a depleted squad. But I think they've got a big Champions League game, because I don't think have they started the Champions League well. I think did they lose a game? They lost a game.
To Napoli. They got battered at Napoli.
Yeah. So
it'll be interesting. I'm really undecided as to how I think this is going to go. I was actually about to go with a prediction that I think we might lose 2-1. And partly I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like we're sort of due a bad performance, because I don't even think Man United was a bad performance. I think that we were unlucky. We should have been a goal up, and it's a different game. I think we're sort of due a game where things don't come off. It's kind of one of those, it's just not our day type games. And I think if I'm Liverpool, even though I'll sort of I'll go against what I said just kind of before in terms of that, Arsenal potentially are an awful team for Liverpool to play right now, and just say that, I also think Liverpool probably would feel less pressure coming away to Arsenal than they would if they were at home to someone else. I think away at Arsenal, everyone's probably, like you said, we talked before, the bookies are apparently making Arsenal favourites. They're kind of weirdly the underdogs. And they won't care. They won't care about the atmosphere. It'll be good atmosphere. They won't care. They've done this. They've had big European away nights and big stadiums. I don't think our atmosphere will get to them. Our atmosphere might lift us. I don't think we'll really get to them. So I'm a bit worried. A combination of things just not going our way. Plus, it's just a game where I think they might just choose to kind of say, "Yeah, we're Liverpool, we're back," kind of thing. So I'm going to conservatively go with a 2-1 defeat.
Do you reckon this week Klopp's going to have the speakers and the training ground with the Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe song just to get them used to the atmosphere?
There was that joke going around on Twitter about whether he'll play North London forever in training. We're going to be doing that. On your camera, there was something that just came into the it looked like someone was waving a banana. I'm not even lying. I didn't know what that was.
This is Pet Monkey, mate. It's sleeping there.
Anyway, he's very excited. He hasn't even commented on that, so I wonder what
can we talk about this question from
we
Sat?
We can because
it's the second time he's asked.
Yes, that's you put a few comments on there. I apologize. Thank you for the support and kind of the compliment to paying Arsenal today. And he's got this point here. He said, for all three of you to answer, are Arsenal in the title race? So maybe this will be the last thing that we answer before we call it a night, because it has been a long episode. So for all three of you answer, are Arsenal in the title race? Why don't we kick off with, the man who's making his comeback? Niro, are Arsenal in the title race?
No, simple. It's too early for us to be even thinking about the title race or even talking about it. We're not, for me, getting a solid top three, or to be fair, top four, not going to get carried away. Top four will be my target. And I think for me, it will be, I don't know if this is a pessimism in me or just the hurt I've had for the last, 10, 15 years, but until I feel like one of those Leicester seasons, right? Until we actually mathematically can't win the league, I don't think we'll win the league. But I think, what I've done so far is amazing to be even talking about a potential, title race conversation. I think it's just, says a lot about what we've achieved this season.
Yeah. Mice.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. So my answer to that is no. I don't think we are in the title race. As nice as it would be to kind of start dreaming about that and what that could mean for us. Look, I think ultimately there's one team that's a standout team this season. I can't see City really like it. I don't know how you explain what City are doing at the moment, what Haaland's doing, but they're just unreal. And I don't think there is a title race this season. I think it's one team and that's it, basically. I think it's then you've got the remaining teams challenging or chasing for second, third, and fourth, pretty much. And I think with Arsenal specifically, like we don't have the same resources as City have got financially, but in terms of the squad this season, I think our squad at some point this season will start to see the cracks a little bit, like Niro was saying, right? You look at left back, pretty solid. You look at a couple of other positions, right back as well, pretty solid. You look at certain other positions, okay, fine, but Erdegaard's out, Vieira comes in, but otherwise, you take Partey out of this team, you take Jesus out of this team, you take Saliba out of this team, is a big drop off. And I think at some point this season that will start to show, that will start to tell. And I think that's where maybe Arsenal might start dropping points. But I think to be in the title race, you've almost got to. I mean, I don't know what City are going to do this season, but it looks like they're basically going to just. How many points they're going to drop? Like, if you look at what City have done the previous 5 seasons, they've barely dropped any points. They win so many games and they score so many goals. So they've just gone up a level this season. How many points they're going to drop this season? So personally, I think it's just too early for Arsenal. And like Niro said, I'll take fourth. You give me fourth now, I'll take fourth. I don't care. We're top of the league now. Give me fourth, I'll take it. Champions League is what it's all about.
It's weird though, is it, right? Because you say about how many points they're going to drop, and I do agree with you. I think they're just absolutely unreal. But when they have dropped points this season, the 2 games that they've drawn, it has been really random. It kind of just came out of nowhere, and when there were very different types of games against Palace, they just kind of kept conceding goals. They should have lost that game. They had a goal unfairly disallowed. Like, it was a pretty poor defensive performance. And against Villa, it was a pretty poor attacking performance. They didn't seem to be able to. They didn't look very potent. But you could probably argue that it was a bit earlier in the season, right? And Haaland is not only is he a new player, but it's a new system having to play to kind of play to him, regardless of how good it is. And therefore, maybe there was a few things to be worked out at the start. But I think the scary thing about Haaland and City. So for me, 2 things. One, look, man, if you get Harry Kane, arguably is the second best striker in the league, right? And you probably say if you give Harry Kane 2 chances, he's going to score at least one of those 2 chances, right? If you give Harry Kane 2 with Haaland, it's not even. You give him a half chance and he's probably going to score. It's not even a normal. Like, most players don't make that into a chance. It's because of this. He's just abnormal. And I think people have been joking about Cyborg and just like him being an alien, but it's because the types of things that he's able to do to get in positions to score, like, it's not even a chance for a normal player. So I think for that, it's just gonna be so scary playing City, because you just sort of feel like you can't even give him a half chance. But the other thing that I think is the reason is basically what you said. This again, my answer is that I don't think Arsenal are in the title race, because I think if it wasn't for City, I'd probably say we are in the title race, but because of City, I don't think there will be a race. Yeah, but I don't think there will be a race.
If went in it, you think we would have actually challenged? Because for me, I think as what you spoke about before in terms of our squad depth, right? First half, playing Europa League against smaller teams, we can rest our players. When it gets to this, February, March, Aprils, when we're going to be playing knockout stage Europa League, we'll be playing our first 11. I think then injuries will start coming through. Then we'll see the brittleness in our squad will be exposed. We'll start dropping points a lot more. So if City weren't in it, I don't think we'll be challenging.
So I would agree with that, like normally, and I agree actually with the fact that I think we probably still would drop points. But the reason why I'd say that we'd be in a title race if it wasn't for City is because those other teams are also just dropping a lot more points than I thought that they would. So those teams that otherwise in a normal situation wouldn't be doing like there's no way that anyone thought Liverpool would do this. And even with Chelsea, did anyone think that they were going to get in this much of a mess that they would sack their manager that early? Like those things weren't predicted. And as a result of that, I think given the fact that Arsenal have actually started so well, even if we were to kind of end up dropping points in the predictable ways like you've described, there's actually every chance that the other teams will continue dropping similar sorts of points, and therefore we could be in a race. But City, I think for the Haaland reason and the other reason that I said like about squad depth, City had basically a central midfield crisis and a central defensive crisis going into the Man United game. It probably would have been a crisis for another team, like where effectively Gundogan came in as a third choice. As well, there were two injuries, two people ahead of him, and he started in the defensive midfield position. And in centre backs, Stones was out, Diaz was out, and it's not anyone else. Imagine Arsenal have your main two centre backs out and your main two central midfielders out. There's no way you're scoring 6 goals against anyone, right? Like that's not. So for me, I think that's kind of the scary thing. And I know Sat made another comment before saying, City have raised it, but so have Arsenal. Yeah, but I think, City raising it and Arsenal raising it, it's slightly different. Arsenal going from the
start
3 to a 4, from like a 9 to a 10.
Yeah. And
I think Sat's had a few drinks, to be fair. He's on holiday, so he's been messaging me, and could be the drink talking.
So Niro, why don't you answer Sat's final follow-up question before we wrap it up? So Sat is saying, Niro, come April and you're still first/second. Isn't the Premier League a priority over the Europa?
It's funny because we sort of had this similar debate, didn't we, Myers, on Saturday, but a bit different to this question. But great question. I remember during the Unai Emery year, when we went for the Europa League and we came 5th, we got to the final. And I remember, I think it was I must be after the Man United game where I said, sack off Europa League. It's just we don't have the depth enough to be fighting on two fronts here. Like prioritize one over the other, and obviously the counter argument is, you want your eggs in as many baskets as you want. Personally, when it comes to this question, as sort of Myers was saying, for me, I'll take top 4. For me, Champions League football is priority. I don't want to get too greedy and try and go for a title or go for Europa League trophy and end up with nothing and come 5th again. I think we've got a journey planned. Arteta and Eddie have got their 3-year, 4-year plan. And if the plan is to get Champions League, for me, I want that Champions League football. I don't want to try and we're not good enough, or don't have the depth enough to be competing on more than one front, in my opinion. So to answer that question, I think, prioritize, and it says Premier League here, but prioritize top 4 via the league. For me, will show more sort of progress as a club. That's a no, right? To that question.
Yeah, he's a Liverpool fan.
It's a good response. And to close off the show, we've got a comment from a Liverpool fan. Prasad, have you guys got a spare ticket for Sunday? I think the answer from all 3 of us is no. It's I actually know a Liverpool fan who's in the North Bank.
No way.
He's going to be in the North Bank. Yeah, I will try. I'll call him out when he's there, and everyone.
How's he got a ticket in the North Bank?
I'm not sure. Well, I think partly his kids are Arsenal fans, so it's probably like using his kids' membership. But anyway, no, we haven't got a spare ticket for Sunday, and we can't wait for Sunday. And it's going to be a fun week of football. And we've listened, I think we did one of our longest episodes last episode, and this has gone on for about 1.5 hours. I think that it probably warrants it for 3 reasons. One, we battered the North London derby. We got 2 games that we previewed, but also the return of the king. Niro is back, so it deserved it. Listen, everyone, thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for your interactions. Appreciate it on a Monday night. Quite a variety of fans who joined us this evening. So thank you very much, boys. Any closing comments? Otherwise, is it farewell?
I think Niro should do this.
Niro, you do the farewell. Say thank you to the fans, Niro.
No,
all the support they've given you.
Yes.
all these
you
episodes
guys
that
have
you've
stood
done.
by me for the last year. Yeah, week in, week out, you've been supporting me. Thank you very much. No, but honestly, guys, it's been great to be back on the show today. Didn't realize how much I sort of missed it and enjoyed it. So a lot of love there. And thank you everyone for your continued support across all our platforms. Hope you continue to support us. Means a lot to us. Thank you.
And I was just going to say as well, post-match Saturday, me and Niro, mate, we went off. We had a great time. Raj, you missed out, man. You missed out. Mate,
tequilas.
we were queuing up for Greenwich. Was it North Greenwich weather station? North Greenwich station?
Yeah.
Saliba song. The whole crowd. There was when you leave the O2 and there's an event and everyone's queuing for the station.
I don't know how we the video. You sent me the video.
Oh, yeah, sent the video.
All those people look like they're just like, who the fucking
I'm in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have done it because it could have easily been a Spurs fan just come and fucking walloped us. We were both smashed out of our faces, wouldn't have known. But we had a great. Me and Niro, man, you missed out.
It's great, right?
Missed out. You and Aaron.
Proper.
But yeah, anyway, just wanted to end on that because it was a happy celebration post match. We did it for you, so on your behalf.
Happy season so far. Long may it continue, guys. Thank you for joining us, guys. Thank you. It's been fun as ever. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and listening in. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys.
See you later, boys. Nice one.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye.